Oh dear. Oh dear. I nearly didn't do this week. Nearly didn't do it this week. Not for the reason you think. Not for the reason you think. I always front up when something like Thursday night happens. But that wouldn't matter in this case because no one watches this. No one cares. Um, if I do a pod or I don't do a pod at this stage. However, the actual reason is that I just had to jumble around to fit it in. Um, but we managed to do it, and that's why you're watching on a Thursday, which is an issue for a pod that is somewhat heavily review based. Um, to put it out on the night that the next round starts. However, it's just what we have to deal with. Typically, you're going to see it on a Monday or a Tuesday. That's the aim. However, stuff happens, and I just um, would rather have this sort of consistency of having a pod each week rather than missing it because I kind of missed the boat and then coming back 2 weeks later and going, I'm still here, which I've been guilty of doing before. So we are back for episode 18 of Footy and Stuff. If you're new here, my name is Brandon. If you're not new here, thank you for returning. Without further ado, let's get into the swing of things. So we're getting back into proper format this week. This is typically what you're going to see week on week from this pod. So we'll start with the round review game by game. We're going to talk about Thursday night first, then get through all of that. Player of the Year votes from last week will be back because I thought that was fun. So I'm going to continue that. You might have already seen those on Instagram because I'm going to start posting those there as well at the start of the week, but hopefully after the pod comes out in future. But yeah, bringing a new segment as well. That'll happen halfway through the pod, so stay tuned for that. Supercoach review, tips, and then we're out. Do we start with Carlton? See, I could either keep it linear, start with Thursday night, go through to Sunday night, and make that, which is typically how you would do it. Or I can make everyone wait if you're here to see me complain, which I mean, you're not going to get much from me. You're not going to get much from me at all. I've had Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, Sunday. It's Thursday. I've had a week to let this simmer, so you're not going to get a lot from me. However, if you come on a Monday and we've had a loss like this, you might get a bit. Um, to that point, we could probably just start with Thursday night. Richmond defeat Carlton 13-4-82 to 9-15-69, which is the first point of frustration. Just the sheer accuracy that Richmond had to just credit to those boys because purely based on that, they probably shouldn't have won. 17 scoring shots to 24. We had our chances and we blew it massively. And Richmond were just enormous. Positives for Carlton, not a lot. I thought Tom De Koning was really good, but even then, at times, he gave Toby Nankervis a bit too much of a run at it. I feel that at this stage, Tom should be dominating him. But instead, it was just a really good matchup, which I mean, great for the neutral to watch the two go at it and have the game that they had respectively. But that's what happens there. Aside from that, not a lot to ride home about for Carlton. There were a couple of defenders that were really good, ironically. I thought, aside from Tom, who was the standout throughout, I thought our three best players were probably defenders, which sounds ridiculous. But if you watch the game, and especially if you're a Carlton fan, you'll know the exact three players I'm talking about. And you'll probably know the two players I'm definitely not talking about as well. But yeah, aside from that, just a really good performance overall from Richmond. I feel like I would have had more words for this game on Monday, which is why I want to start getting this pod out on Mondays. But no, I mean they just ran over us. There was definitely way too much complacency from this Carlton team going into this. And particularly once we got out to that lead, I would love to be a fly on the wall in those rooms because I reckon they were so up and about in the worst way possible for them to then come out, drop that lead, and struggle so badly to that everything just went wrong. It was player leadership, it was coaching structure, it was just nothing went right, clearly. Um, and that's what we get for it. That's what we get for it. Credit to Richmond though, because they just ran us over. Absolutely ran us over massively. Um, We had our chances late. Swung Jack Silvani forward, which I thought should have happened much earlier in hindsight because he looked very good. Um, and we'll talk about him a bit later. But yeah, not much more for me to say there, unfortunately. Just move on. Hopefully tonight's better. We'll talk about tonight on next week's pod, though. Um, yeah. Friday night, Hawthorn v Essendon. Hawthorn 17-9, 111. Defeat Essendon 12-13, 85. Another team who just had their chances to win and didn't capitalize. I was impressed by Essendon. I was really impressed by them at times. Um, Obviously the better team won, and it's hard against a team who seem to be as consistent as Hawthorn are shaping to be this year. Um, to get one up on them. They were just it would have been such a hard game. I'm glad it's raining tonight, and again we'll talk about this in the tips later. But um, Hawthorn that the game style that Sam Mitchell's implemented is just going to be. I'm already so painfully regretting putting this team ninth. Because it's just the most massive oversight ever, I think, already. They're definitely going to lose games. They're going to get worked out by teams, but I feel like the game style they play is so hard to stop, even when you know how to do it. Does that make sense? I'm waffling. Yeah, the Hawks were just unreal, just so good. What more can I say? What more can I say about them? Um, for them to do it without much key forward presence as well is impressive. Um, I spoke a little bit about those small forwards pre-season and how I almost assumed that it'd be hard for them to carry that momentum over as a group and perform to the same level that they did at the back end of last season and finals. And they've done it. They've done it. Connor McDonald was great. Dylan Moore was the best player on the ground. Spoiler alert. Um, Guinea had a much better game than he did last week. I thought Nick Watson had a much better game than he did last week. And they just and even Marbior, like Marbior was obviously their main key forward presence, and he was good too. They bring in Jack Gunston this week, so they've got a little bit more in terms of key forward stocks there. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a change in how they operate. But yeah, albeit against a weaker Essendon backline overall, when you compare them to the backlines that other teams have got, it was a pretty good performance from the Hawks, and they're going to be hard to stop. Moving on to Saturday, Super Saturday. Started off with Geelong and the Dockers, and I am baffled at this one. Geelong 23-9, 147 defeat the Dockers 10-9, 69. The Cats just the granted, I didn't think they'd be terrible. I put them fifth, but the more people continue to doubt them, the more they continue to prove how much of a well-oiled machine this football club is. Like they're just perennially there. But they just walked over this Dockers team. Not for the entire game. They got out early. They were leading by 54 points at halftime. 54 points, that's 9 goals. And then by three-quarter time, it's back to 21 points, courtesy of a Murphy Reed barrage of goals. And you think, oh, this Dockers team is about it. They might do something here. They might actually come back and win this. And then, and then they lose by 78 points because the Cats just have that composure and this ability to, when they're in a bit of danger, just get the job done. That's what they did. And it was disgusting. Disgusting. Jeremy Cameron was on one in that last quarter. I think he kicked 3 of his 4 goals in the last. Their forward line was on. Bailey Smith looked fantastic. Max Holmes looked unreal. The back line was good. Sam De Koning looked unreal. Just such a well-oiled machine, as I said before, and it all came together. And now you wonder how indicative this game is of the two sides, if that makes sense. Like, our Freo as good as I thought? Are Geelong this good? I don't know. I don't know. We'll find out. Again, it's round one, so it's hard to tell where teams fall when results like this sort of happen. But the Cats looked unreal. And now there's question marks over the Dockers straight away, which will be very interesting because they've got a big game this week at home against the Swans, who we will move on and talk about now. Sydney 12-10-82 defeat Ed by the Lions 12-14-86. Didn't watch all of this game, didn't catch the end especially. Um, but from what I saw, and I obviously watched highlights after because you can't talk about games unless you have somewhat of an idea. Um, Massive result for the Lions. They were in a bit of strife in the first half. The Swans definitely looked the better team. Um, and for them to just fight back and get the win there was pretty impressive. Without obviously he was playing, but basically without their best player as well, because Lachie Neale was shut out of it hard, shut out of it big time. But the beauty of Brisbane is they have the players to step up when that happens. Josh Dunkley was fantastic. Jared Berry was very good. Levi Ashcroft looked like he's been playing for 10 years, which is, I don't know why we're shocked at that. But he looked unreal. Even his brother was like not entirely brilliant, but he was pretty good. So you've got four or five McCluggage as well. You've got four or five mids that have the ability to really take a game on when their best player is shut out of it the way that he is. Like Lachie only had 10 touches, three tackles, two clearances. So it's a poor game by his standards. Unreal from Brisbane though. Unreal, and it begs the question, how do they look when Lachie Neale's on with all those players next to him? On to Saturday night. The Bulldogs 17-11-113 defeat North Melbourne 14-13 97. A 16-point margin. Um, Hard for me to read this one because I didn't think the Bulldogs would be very good this year. However, they looked quite good on Saturday night. So how much praise do I give North Melbourne in this situation where I thought that they would win? I thought they probably should have won. Um, and they didn't. But the Bulldogs look good. So do I have to praise North Melbourne? I think we're past the point of giving North too much praise for losses like this. Like they looked improved for sure. They looked very good compared to last year, but they just have to start winning these games. So I'm not going to give them too much credit for losing because that's ultimately what they did. However, they did look improved for sure, for sure. But to the point of the Bulldogs, no Bont, no Liam Jones, no Cody Waitman, no Treloar, no Jamara, and they still looked pretty good. I thought the midfield was very good. Libba, Ed Richards was arguably the best player on the ground. Matt Kennedy just could have used him. Could have used him. No, I love Matty, and I'm glad he's getting a run at it. I don't know how. I mean, I doubt he gets a run in that midfield once Bont and Treloar are back. Like he'd probably be fifth best at that point, so he'd be on limited minutes. But to see him get a proper run and uh and be able to do something in there was very nice. I think ultimately what we saw from the Bulldogs, despite the high volume of players that they had missing, and the profile of those players, is that they were pretty well balanced. Um, and that aided them nicely against a North team that really, as I said last week, on paper, probably looked a little bit better in terms of star power. Like I think at this point that's the point that North are at. They have some very good players. Um, and they just have to get it right structurally now and game plan. And you trust Clarko to do that. Um, but yeah, no, I think the Bulldogs did a fantastic job here of getting the upper hand and keeping it. The other game was Saturday night, and I'm not going to talk about it for too long, because what do you say about a 91-point loss at the MCG when your goal is to make finals for Port Adelaide? 21-10, 136, the Pies defeat Port Adelaide 6-9, 45. The Pies looked fantastic. Those key forwards were just Tim Membry and Dan McStay in particular, because they're the ones that sort of get around the ball a little bit more. So Membry 17 touches, 10 marks, and four goals. McStay, 21 touches, 7 marks, and 3 goals. Brody Myercheck still kicked 3 goals, although he's that sort of deep lying forward. And he only touched the ball 9 times. But that trio looks very good. And it feels like now where n none of the three of them are particularly dominant key forwards, I think. In the same vein that, say, a Jeremy Cameron is, or a Charlie Curnow is, or a Nick Larkey shaping to be, or a Ben King is. But as a trio, they're so well spread that you need a very uh, well-rounded backline to be able to stop what they've got, because they've also got the smalls, Bobby Hill, Jamie Elliott, Bo McCreary. It looks very good. It looks very good. And I know it's only one game again. Well, it's 2 games really because they played the Giants, but based upon this game, because I feel like you give them a pass for what they went through in Sydney with the conditions and so on and so forth. I like it a lot, is what I'm trying to say. Port Adelaide, on the other hand, poor. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to get on them too early. I mean, who they play someone this week that they should be beating. Yeah, they play the Tigers this week at Adelaide Oval. It's a good chance for them to get momentum back, and I just think you never know. You never know. They should be a lot better than this. So you give them the chance to prove that they are better than this, if that makes sense. But it was abysmal. On to Sunday now. Starting off with Adelaide and St Kilda. Adelaide 21-9, 135 defeat St Kilda 10-12, 72. Demolition job. I can't say I didn't really expect this from St Kilda because I don't think they're going to be very good this year. I spoke about this in predictions. I put them 16th for a reason. Um, and it kind of came to fruition a little bit. Granted, again, I've said it a few times, it's one game. So I'm not entirely sure how indicative this is of either team. Are Adelaide just really, really good? Because there's a chance they're just really, really good. I thought that midfield was unbelievable. Perhaps the most well-rounded midfield of the week. Dawson, Saligo, Rankin. In terms of performance, I think it's probably the best overall midfield performance of the week, for sure. All of them got plenty of ball. All of them got on the scoreboard. I just thought it was really, really nice to watch. Um, so good from them. Moving on, Melbourne and GWS. This was a good game, and we didn't see a lot of very good games this round. But Melbourne 11-8 74 went down to the Giants 11-11 77. Um, Melbourne looked like the better side for the majority of this game, in my opinion, which kind of threw me because obviously the Giants are my team to beat, and I don't really see a lot in Melbourne. So to see them go, granted, it was the conditions weren't great. It was wet, very rainy. And that probably in the end enabled the Giants to get up. Because when the rain came, it was very back and forth, and the Giants seemed like they were the better team in those conditions. I mean, the rain from memory looked heaviest third, fourth quarter. Definitely started that fourth quarter. It was just pissing down. And that's when the Giants sort of regained control and got the win back. So yeah, I don't know how much can be said about that. But in terms of the game itself, Toby Green's fantastic as always. Good to see Christian Petrarca back um, in the form that we kind of expect from him after that injury. 27 touches, 2 goals. He looked fantastic. And overall, I just wonder if I've under underrated Melbourne here, or were the Giants just not entirely on their game? Interesting points. Interesting points. Because I think Melbourne, I had an idea in my head putting Melbourne 14th of what they would look like as a team this year. And they just look so much better than anything that I had thought in my head, if that makes sense. Like I liked what I saw. So I'm more inclined to think that they might continue to play like that more often and probably land in a spot better than what I've given them credit for. However, as I've said and will continue to say, we're in round one, so you never know. But yeah, I thought I was impressed by Melbourne, but I'm not. entirely shocked, and I'm glad for the sake of um being right, I guess, that the Giants ended up getting the win. So fair play to them. And the final game of the round was another thumping. There were about five of them this round, which is not nice. But the West Coast Eagles go down to the Gold Coast Suns in what is officially Gold Coast's biggest margin ever, I'm pretty sure. 7-7-49 to 20-16-136. The Suns win by 87 points. And they looked unbelievable. Unbelievable. Um, Factors to keep in mind, West Coast don't look very good. No one expected them to look very good, and they've kind of proven us right off the rip. Um, Granted, though, it was away from home for the Suns, which is massive, massive, massive. I don't care. I don't care that it's against the Eagles, and they're potentially the easiest team to play away against at this stage. Um, because this Gold Coast team have just struggled so hard away from home. So to get that away win at the first chance they have, is so important. And to do it as dominantly as they did is even more important. I thought their midfield was unbelievable. Anderson, Rowell, Tuke Miller kicked a couple goals. So just really, really good. I think Dan Rioli and John Noble and the rebounding. We talked about this when they picked them up and what I thought they would do for this Gold Coast Sun side in terms of transition and rebound. And it looks so much more. It was really good. It was really good. Ben King had probably his best game ever. I mean, statistically, he had his best game ever, 6 goals. But like he just looked fantastic. Is the point? Ben Long looked really good. Jake Rogers, I love, 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 love this player. Um, I think he's gonna have the ability, like the position he plays and the impact that he had at the point that he had it. Like he helped them really drag that lead out at the end there when he kicked those goals. I think he kicked at least two of them in the second half. And I think in close game situations, when the Gold Coast Suns are in need of something or someone to drag them over the line, this could be the player that does it in the role that he currently plays. For him to bob up and just kick 2 goals like that, back to back, I'm pretty sure he kicked them, is just. Can I see on here when he kicked the goals? Of course I can. What do you mean? There's a timeline right there, you idiot. Um, Fourth quarter, yeah, fourth quarter. Rogers, 2-3, and his other goal was in the first quarter, I believe. Yeah, there it is. So he kicked 1 14 minutes into the first quarter, but those two fourth quarter goals, just to really put the dagger in, despite the fact they were up by 10 goals at 3/4 time, were just it was really good to watch, really good to watch. And he, as I said, in big game situations where it's perhaps not as um beyond doubt as it was against the Eagles, he's going to be really important for them. I like it a lot. Jared Witt's 68 hitouts. What more can a ruckman do? I just thought it was so well rounded and so impressive as a whole. Um, yeah, really excited to watch this team throughout the year. Could they finally do it? Again, it's only one round. They only played the Eagles. Not that I'm scoffing at the Eagles, but you know what I mean. It's interesting. They play Melbourne next week, which I think, based on what I just said about Melbourne, is going to be a really telling game. If Gold Coast roll them, yeah. If Melbourne keep it close, maybe Melbourne is still what I was talking about. Maybe they're just better than what we give them credit for. But Gold Coast, yeah, yeah. So that's a round review done. On to the Player of the Year votes now. We're not going to waste too much time here, but if you weren't here last week, I'll explain how it works. Brownlow system, 3-2-1 for each game. And then I'll update with the leaderboard at the end. And at the end of the year, whoever has the most votes wins the award. Richmond Carlton, 1 to Jack Ross, 2 to Sam Lawler, 3 to Nankervis. Hawthorn Essendon, 1 to Carl Amon, 2 to Jai Caldwell, 3 to Dylan Moore. Geelong Freo, 1 to Sam De Koning, 2 to Max Holmes, and 3 to Bailey Smith. Sam Lawler I want to start with because I didn't talk about him in the review. But he, much like what I spoke about with Levi Ashcroft, because I did say that for him, he looked like a veteran out there. Like he actually just made a fool out of us. Was he actually in the three objective best players on the ground? Maybe not. But I think based on expectation and based on his moments and impact, the impact that he had at times in terms of setting up goals, individual disposals, like he was very effective, in my opinion. Um, so two for him. Jack Ross was unbelievable. Potentially deserves more than one vote, but I could only give him one here. Probably their best midfielder on the night. Just really, really good from him. And Toby Nankervis was the best player on the ground. Pretty comfortably, in my opinion. Just unbelievable. And to do it against Tom De Koning, who also looked as good as he was, I don't think it can be understated how difficult that is. Two goals, 21 touches, 35 hitouts, six tackles, seven clearances. He's just a very well-rounded ruckman. And at his size as well, because he's not one of those quick rucks that we've come to like. He's just very impressive. So the three for him is pretty deserved. Hawthorn Essendon, I've given one to Carl Amon, two to Jai Caldwell, three to Dylan Moore. Dylan Moore was the best player on the ground by far. So good. Um, and I expect nothing less from him now. All Australian last year. Like he just does this week in, week out. Contribute on the scoreboard. Is a absolute ball magnet considering his half forward. Just really impressive, really impactful. Not much more to say about that. Jai Caldwell was easily Essendon's best player, potentially the best player on the ground, but I thought Dylan Moore just edged it for the impact he had going forward. But Jai Caldwell was fantastic for the Bombers. He's going to continue to be really important because they can't have another year where Zach Merritt is the main man and the only guy that they look to. Him and Sam Durham just really need to step up and make that a proper midfield unit. And then one vote, I thought Carl Amon was fantastic as well. Um, yeah, not much to say about his game. 28 touches, 10 marks, just kind of always there. Geelong Freo, one vote to Sam De Koning, two votes to Max Holmes, three votes to Bailey Smith. Bailey Smith looked right at home. Just ye- again, I don't think he needed any time to settle in to this Geelong midfield. Just fantastic. 32 touches, one goal, five tackles, seven clearances. So good. Max Holmes was fantastic as well. Got the two goals, so he has that impact going forward as well. And he was sort of his impactful self, if you want to call it that. I feel like I've said impact a lot in the last couple of games. I should look for a different word, but yeah, no, impactful. He was impactful. And Sam De Koning, one vote. Not a dominant ruckman. I don't think that's his MO. Not yet, anyway. While he's kind of learning to adjust to the role a little bit more because he hasn't played an awful lot of time as their number one ruck. So he was probably beaten in there by Luke Jackson, but what he does outside of that one-on-one ruck contest is just so difficult to stop. Him and his brother, tell me what is in those meals that were being fed to them by their parents because that is an absurd, an absurd amount of talent between the two of them. Moving on. Sydney Brisbane, one to Zach Bailey, two to Dane Zorko, three to Josh Dunkley. Western Bulldogs versus North Melbourne, one to Joel Frazier, two to Ed Richards, and three to Bailey Dale. Collingwood Port Adelaide, one to Tim Membry, two to Dan Houston, and three to Steele Sidebottom. Starting with Sydney and Brisbane. Zach Bailey with the one was just fantastic. Four goals. You can't ask for much more from him in terms of scoreboard impact, but he was just all over the ground as well. I love what he offers off that half forward flank and the support that he gives to that midfield, especially in a game where they probably needed that extra because of what they lost from Lachie Neale and the lack of impact that he had. So very good from Zach Bailey. Dane Zorko was himself, gets the two votes, 24 touches, kicked the two goals as well. It's what we've come to expect from him. I'm not surprised. And I never will be from a player who does what he does so consistently. And Josh Dunkley was the best player on the ground. No doubt, 27 touches, one goal, 10 tackles, six clearances. Defensively, offensively, just so hard to stop. They worked out how to stop Lockie Neal. Teams are going to have to work out how to stop both of them because if you can't stop both of them, the other one's going to get off the chain. And that's just such a difficult thing to deal with. Bulldogs North, Joel Frazier won. This kid has just burst out of nowhere. He definitely showed signs in the past. Like I never thought he was a bad player. I thought he definitely had his moments off halfback in that debut season because I think he debuted last year, if I'm not mistaken. However, just looked so at home, and obviously his role would be aided by the losses of the players that they had missing. But 28 touches and a goal. He's so clean with it. He's so clean with it. Really good player. Really good player. I was impressed. So deserves that vote. Ed Richards, 2 votes, was arguably their best player in that midfield with the loss of Treloar, with the loss of Bont. Just the way he stood up in the absence of those two players should be commended for sure. Because he was unbelievable. Also hit the scoreboard. Just really good. Him and Libba are more than enough to I guess, level out what they lose from not having Bont and Treloar in there, who are two All Australians. So, yeah, really good from them. I thought Bailey Dale was their best player. It's a crime, an absolute crime, that he wasn't best 22 at the start of last year. I mean, he was. He's always been best 22, but for some reason, Bevo thought he wasn't best 22. And then he came back in and played the way he did in the back half of last year, and now he's just still playing like that. 29 touches, 2 goals. Just unbelievable. So good. Such a good defender, in my opinion. And then Collingwood Port was always going to be 3 Collingwood players. One to Tim Membry. I couldn't give him and Dan McStay, that is, both of them votes. I thought Membry was the better of the two of them, and maybe that's because he's the new player, and I saw the additional impact that he's been able to have joining the team. But they were both fantastic and they both deserve votes, but only Tim got him in the end. Dan Houston was unbelievable against his old side. So, so good. Didn't mention him before. But the fact that they had no way of stopping this guy is crazy. Is crazy. It's a testament to him and his game, for sure, but it also potentially shines a light on deficiencies in that Port Adelaide game plan. That's a story for another day. We're not going to talk about that now. But yeah, Dan Houston, unreal. And then 3 votes to Steel Sidebottom, who I mean, whenever you expect this guy to fall off, he's prone to pull out a game like this, isn't he? 30 something touches, 31 touches, 1 goal, 6 tackles, just really good. Really good all round, probably the best player on the ground, in my opinion. And then the Sunday games. Adelaide St Kilda, Jake Saligo 1, Isaac Rankin 2, Jordan Dawson 3, probably the most straightforward thing I've ever had to do in my life. Melbourne GWS, Petrarca 1, Tom Green 2, Toby Green 3, and West Coast Gold Coast, Jared Witts 1, Ben King 2, Noah Anderson 3. Adelaide St Kilda, as I said, so straightforward. This midfield was unbelievable. As I said before, probably the best midfield across the weekend. And they were all just unreal. And they all deserve votes. Um, in terms of splitting them, how did I do that? I thought Jordan Dawson was the best of the three. I think leadership quality gets him over the line there. Plus, he's just kind of the player that stands out. He had the 9 marks, so he's a bit more of a presence. And I thought he looked very nice in there for sure. And then Saligo and Rankin, I mean, you could barely split them. Barely split them. I think I gave Rankin the extra vote because of the extra goal, but I mean, he's more of an attacking player by nature, so you'd expect him to get on the scoreboard more often anyway. But yeah, Rankin 28 touches and 2 goals, Saligo 29 and 1, and the 8 tackles. Just such a good midfield unit. If they stay fit, the three of them, plus whoever else they've got, Sid Draper, Rory Laird can go through there. Matt Crouch also was very good. Yeah, they're going to be hard to stop this season for sure. Petrarca 1 vote, as I said before, so good to see him back to the level that we sort of expect from him. 27 touches and those 2 goals. He was Melbourne's best player for sure. Maybe apart from Max Gawn, who looked dominant as ever. But yeah, track unreal. 2 votes to Tom Green. He's just an unbelievable player. Such a good player. Two votes to Tom Green. He's just such a good player. Unbelievable player. 35 touches, nine clearances, and a goal. Just so hard to stop at his size and power and the way he attacks the game. It was only trumped in this game by Toby Green, who just an unbelievable captain's performance from Toby, which got him over the line for me. 23 touches, three goals, one of which came in the last quarter when they needed it most. He's just, he knows how to stand up when they need him to stand up. He's a proper captain, for sure. Love that from Toby. And finally, Gold Coast and West Coast. One vote to Jared Witts. Could have had more. I mean, 68 hitouts was just unreal, but I thought the two players above him were fantastic. But nonetheless, yeah, just dominant from Jared Witts. I mean, again, let me restate it. 68 hitouts is unreal. I think it's definitely top 10 all time. So a proper dominant ruck performance from him. Two votes to Ben King. I think what edged him over Jared Witts for me was the fact that six goals being a personal best, and him having the start to the season that he's had is very important for the team as a whole, because the momentum that he's going to take into the next few rounds is huge for them to be able to get that really good start to the year going. And yeah, I thought King and Witts were, they were as dominant as each other. So I decided to go with what I think as a whole is more impactful for the team. And that's Ben King, and he's six goals. So he was fantastic. And then three votes to Noah Anderson, who I just thought was terrific. Terrific. Such a good midfielder. Um, Finished with 36 touches, five tackles, nine clearances. He's just, I mean, it's what I talked about when I put him in the Supercoach team. I think he has another level to reach, and he definitely reached it in this game for sure. Um, and he did it away from home where he's typically struggled. And we spoke about that too. So I'm really impressed with what he did this week. And I think when they go back to the Gold Coast, we're going to continue to see this level week in, week out. Hopefully, you can keep that up away from home. But yeah, really impressed by Noah. So he gets the three votes for me there. Which brings me to the leaderboard where no one sits at the top because neither Will Day or Finn Callahan or any of the players that got votes in those first two games were able to carry it over. So Will Day's on three, Finn Callahan's on three. They're both from opening round. And then obviously it's all the three voters from this week that sit right below him. So Nank, Dylan Moore, Bailey Smith, Josh Dunkley, Bailey Dale, Steele Sidebottom, Jordan Dawson, Toby Green, and Noah Anderson. Expecting a couple of those players to get the jump pretty quickly, though. All right, moving on to a new segment that we are going to call Special Mentions. Now, in this segment, I'm going to go through the nine games of the week. And for each game, I'm going to pick out one player, typically someone A from the losing team, more often than not. This week, I've got five losing team players and four winning team players. So the split's kind of nice, but um, it's typically going to be losing players. And also typically players who I haven't previously mentioned in the pod. There is one who I spoke about at length, though. So not always. However, it's going to be a player who hasn't been as talked about as a whole, who deserves a bit of a mention for their efforts in that game. Again, typically a player from a losing team who gave a really good effort in spite of his overall team's performance, which is definitely the case for a lot of these games this week. So, hopefully, I explained that okay. And we'll start off with Carlton Richmond, and that player is Jack Silvani. Self-explanatory. Just so good. As were, like, I could have gone Ollie Hollands here, another defender. Jacob Wiedering, I wouldn't have gone because Wiedering's Wiedering and he's an All-Australian player and you expect that from him. But when I said before that three of our best players were arguably defenders, it's those three, Wiedering, Silvani, and Ollie Hollands, and the fact that the defensive performance as a whole panned out the way it did when those players played the way they did is very interesting. And it's probably indicative of a couple of other performances and individual mistakes and whatnot. And I'm not going to single out anyone, but that's what happened. So, yeah, Jack Silvani was unreal, I thought. Just looked really at home in that defense. And I was pretty impressed by it. Obviously, we swung him forward late. Should have done that earlier. Because when we swung him forward, he looked fantastic there as well, and very nearly delivered us a win, or helped deliver us a win. Kicked one goal, could have kicked two. Um, yeah, yeah. I think I expect him to stay in the back line tonight, despite the fact that Hawthorn don't really have the key forward power that other teams do. Um, but yeah, he looked at home there for sure. I think the thing to note more than anything is the effort that perhaps other Carlton players have come under fire for not showing. Jack Silvani just shows that effort constantly. So the effort was definitely there. That's never going to come into question. But I thought he looked very good as well. Hawthorn Essendon was a little bit more difficult. I couldn't really pinpoint a player who I thought really fit the mold of what I think this segment is meant to be, if that makes sense. Like just a player who really flew under the radar. So I've gone with Josh Battle. Again, I don't really think he flew under the radar per se, but I also don't know if he is getting a ton of credit for how much he's actually added to this Hawthorn backline. I think what more than anything, what he does is he frees up James Sicily so much to be able to do the things that we've seen James Sicily do, because Sis has arguably been Hawthorn's best player across the first 2 weeks, in my opinion. Um, yeah, he just frees him up so much, and he's looked clean, he's looked composed, he's looked difficult to beat, and I'm just really impressed. And I think he should be getting a little bit more credit this early for how important that role is for the operation of that whole back line now, and what their captain is out there to do. So Josh Battle, unreal. Geelong Freo, this is just the most straightforward pick ever. Murphy Reed just kicked 4 goals on debut in the space of about 7 minutes. What? What? Absurd, absurd. So good. Yeah, no, Murphy Reed. It's Murphy Reed. Sydney Brisbane, we spoke a little bit before about how Lockie Neal had pretty much no impact. And that's because of James Jordan. He was fantastic at implementing that tag last year, and I think he's clearly going to continue to do so this year, because the way he just shut Lockie Neal out was unbelievable. Again, as I said, there's a problem that arises when you play Brisbane where you target a Lockie Neal and then you've got those other five midfielders there just doing their thing. But that says nothing about James Jordan. He was sent out there to tag Lockie Neal. He did the job, kept him to 10 touches. Unreal. Really good. Really good. So James Jordan deserves all the credit in the world for that. Bulldogs North, I've gone with Tom Powell. More often than not, playing with Sheasel, LDU, Jai Simpkin, Wardlaw when he's in, so on and so forth. More often than not, this guy's not going to get any credit unless he has an absolute standout game. But he looked very, very good, and I think he's going to be such an important player. I get a bit like what I talked about with Josh Battle and how he frees up James Sicily. Tom Powell being the midfielder and having the impact that he looks like he's going to have week in, week out is going to be so important for the game style of someone like a Harry Sheasel, who is so versatile and will be able to plug gaps wherever they need at any given time and not have to worry about who's contributing in the midfield, because they'll still have LDU, Simpkin, Tom Powell, so on and so forth. I thought he looked really good, and he's going to be very important for them, I think, when it comes to structure and game plan. Collingwood Port, I tried to pick a Port player. I tried to find a Port player, but it was just the least inspiring stuff I've seen from them in a long time. And when there's such an obvious choice on the Collingwood side, it's a bit hard to make that decision. So I've gone with Ned Long because it's Ned Long. Um, One of the biggest criticisms that we all had going into the year for, well, not so much criticism, concerns. One of the biggest concerns we had for Collingwood going into this year was, if players start to go down, how thin is this list? Who steps up? And that was definitely a valid concern to have when you looked at them on paper. It was very top heavy. However, players like Ned Long coming in and doing what he did on Saturday, granted, circumstantial, How bad were Port really? Like, how much of a run at it did he have, if that makes sense? But players like Ned Long, as I said, coming in and doing what he did shows that they maybe bat a little, at least a little bit deeper than what we all thought. Because is he nailed on best 22? Initially, I would have said no. So he's someone on the fringes that has come in and bang straight away, looked to prove himself. So all credit in the world to that guy right there. Adelaide St Kilda. Boy, have I been looking forward to this one. It's Riley Thilthorpe. I spoke about him a little bit at the back end of last year and in the Surprise All Australians podcast that I did, and how I thought that he was going to go kaboom this year. And there's a chance he's about to go kaboom because he looked very good. Darcy Fogarty had one more goal, but I thought Riley Thilthorpe looked the best out of that forward group um, on Sunday against teams that aren't particularly as well equipped when it comes to key defensive prospects. He's gonna have an absolute field day against some teams this year. An absolute field day. I was so impressed. And I think coming out of this game, more people need to be talking about how impressive him and Darcy Fogarty looked as a duo because they have to transition out of that Taylor Walker era and they're doing it very well, in my opinion. Yeah, Phil Thorpe, yeah, definitely deserves that mention for sure. Melbourne GWS, I've gone with Caleb Windsor. He didn't have an amazing game by any standard. I thought he was good, but what I look at with a player like Caleb Windsor out of this game, 16 touches and a goal, I picked him for some of the like individual moments that he had because I think he looks so clean with a football in his hand. Like watching him scoop up a ball and seemingly just waltz through a couple of players and hand it off purely on the eye test because I love the eye test. I think the eye test can be really indicative of a player's ability. Um, I'm not saying there aren't players who look good but aren't really good. Um, but he looks really good, and I think he's very good. Just a really good player to watch. I'm impressed. I thought he played okay. I think he has the ability to have some massive games this year, though. Keep an eye, get some stocks on Caleb Windsor. Load up on him because I think he's going to be good. Final game of the week, Gold Coast, West Coast. This is the player who I said I spoke extensively about before, so I'm not going to speak about him for too long, but it's Jake Rogers. Again, as I said before, I think he's going to be someone in tighter games that has the ability to really flip a game on its head and give them a really good chance against anyone when it's close. I think teams are going to have to really keep an eye on him and the ability that he has to have those quick bursts of impact because I thought what I saw from him was really impressive on Sunday. So yeah, if you want more, go back to the Gold Coast West Coast portion of my round preview, and I spoke a bit more about him there. But yeah, no, really good. All right, moving on to the Super Coach review now. I scored 2,176 in round one. The lockout is in 6 hours for the first game, which means I need to really get my. I mean, I don't really need to do much because I'll loop the coning again. Um, and those Carlton and Hawthorn players that I've got will stay where they are. But that being said, yeah, really good round from me, I think. There were players that underperformed for sure. However, if I go home, top 8%. So I'm okay with it. It's an okay start. It's not amazing. But I've never been amazing at Supercoach, so who cares? Um, oh, thank you. Yeah, nice. What was I going to say? Where do we start? Defenders, yeah. Sheasel and Clark, I thought were really good. Where's we? Oh, I've already arranged a bench for buys. Yeah, best 18 scoring this week, which will be good, I think. But Whitfield was very good. Clark and Sheasel were okay. I expect them to go a little bit more than that. Roberts was good again. These boys will all gain cash. James Leake wasn't the sub, and he only scored 13. So I might look at moving him on for someone who's a little bit less of a sub risk and better value in terms of price gain. Anderson was as unreal as I expected him to be. Glad I put all my chips in with him. Sarong, very good. We'll probably go higher than that, but I mean, he cracked 100, so I'm okay with it. Chera, very good. Oliver should go a bit better, and Will Day was unders for what I expected, but I expect him to go a lot better in future weeks as well. Rookie wise, Ashcroft I didn't field. I've moved him since for this week, but Ashcroft I didn't field because he was expected to be the sub, and then that changed, so that's annoying. Um, Elijah Sardis unders for what I expected. Campo was okay. Finn O'Sullivan would go a bit more, but I'm not too mad about it in terms of their break evens. Harvey Langford was the sub. I need to get Xavier Lindsay in. I need to get Xavier Lindsay in because he's going to start again, and he looked unreal, and I think he's going to be a huge accumulator. And while he's not as impactful as some rookies, and it's not going to get looked at as much as Sam Lawler, Levi Ashcroft, so on and so forth, he's a massive accumulator, as I said, and he's going to be very good for Supercoach. So I've got to get him in for sure. And then Hugh Boxall, I think I used as the loop to get to Koning the captaincy. So that worked out all right for me. Harry Boyd was okay. Happy with the two ruckmans. That's set and forget now, I think. Unless the value on Gorn is just too much to pass up at some stage. McRae good, Rankin good, Horn Francis unders, but they all played like crap, so I don't know, it is what it is. Caleb Daniel okay, Kako good, Davidson, Mitch Nevitt very good. Happy with him. Happy Elijah Hewitt started as well. If he continues to start, hopefully he comes into his own a little bit, and gets some more points than that. And then Connor Stone will continue to play, I think, as well. So overall, pretty good. We'll see next week how I progress and what changes I make. But yeah, I think I'm okay so far. And with that, we are here to finish up with the tips for round two. And we start off with an interesting one from my perspective. Um, as far as we know, it's raining tonight. Want to get that out of the way first. Because of that, it's not going to be a blowout either way. Hawthorn's game plan, I feel, is inhibited in the rain. They won't be able to play it to its fullest extent, and that will make life a little bit easier for Carlton. So that's the first point. Second point is I'm fully expecting a response from Carlton. If we are to be anything this year, we need to respond here. We can't get blown out by Hawthorn, or else it's yeah. Um, I always tip Carlton on the tipping app, so I will be tipping us by a solitary point on there. That's just how I am. I tip Carlton all the time. However, for the sake of remaining unbiased, I'm not going to tip us on here because I don't think it would be reasonable to expect us to win. A lot of people are tipping us to bounce back and win because it's just a Carlton thing to do, and I would not be shocked at all. If we come on here next week and Carlton have won, I'm not surprised in the slightest. However, it would be more reasonable to tip Hawthorn here by 10 points. Bulldogs Collingwood. Geez, at the MCG. Why is there a home game at the MCG for the Bulldogs against the Pies? I don't know. Collingwood just looked so impressive last week. Again, I spoke about the Bulldogs and how I was much more impressed than what I thought I would be by how they played. I think they'll hold up okay in this game. I don't think they're going to get flogged by the Pies. If they do, then we've got to start talking about the Pies seriously. Um, but then there's always that opening round performance that casts a little bit of doubt. But I think Collingwood are going to carry momentum well here. They're not going to win by as much, but I think it'll be fairly easy for them to run away with this. So I'm going to say Collingwood by 28 points. Essendon Adelaide. Oh, tough one. I might have said Essendon if they still had Langford and they still had Ridley, but I think those two losses are massive. They're going to get overrun in the midfield by Dawson and Rankin and Soligo. I'm all in on that midfield for sure. Even after one game, I don't care. Adelaide's forward line looks really good defensively, perhaps not as up to scratch, but then again, I don't think the Essendon forward line is unbelievable, especially without Kyle Langford, who I think is their best key. So that being said, and Ben Keys in Melbourne as well always seems to Ben Keys against Essendon and Carlton in particular, wrap it up. So he's going to kick four. Um, and they'll probably win by 19 points. Port Adelaide and Richmond. As I said before, Port just need to bounce back here. If they don't, it is worry signs. Um, Not taking anything away from Richmond last week because they were fantastic and they were by far the deserved winner. Um, but I just don't expect them to back it up. I'm not gonna raise my expectation for them as a whole because of that one game. Because I think it was such an anomaly in terms of factors coming into play and how we performed and how they performed. Um, they're gonna have a pep in their step for sure. And I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means, but I just think Port need to respond. And they're the better team and they need to show that. And if they know or if they learnt any lesson from watching us play Richmond, just don't be complacent and it's likely going to work in your favor. So I think they're going to beat Richmond by 40 points, which isn't as much as perhaps they might have expected prior to the season. But yeah, I think it's an expectation that they should walk away with this fairly comfortably. Geelong St Kilda at Docklands. Yeah, no, I don't expect St Kilda to do anything in this game, to be honest. Geelong just looked unreal. I probably think they looked better than Adelaide if you analyze the two performances side by side, and that doesn't bode well for St Kilda, at all, in my opinion. They're going to try to bounce back, but the way this Geelong team is set, they're going to be hard to beat this year. I think they're going to be hard to beat in this game, and I think they're going to win by 45 points at least. I was about to say 45 points, but as I went to click it, I think it's going to be more. 52 points. I think they're going to run over this Saints team. I truly believe that. Brisbane West Coast. Yeah, another demolition job for sure. Um, I think what Brisbane were able to do from the position that they were in last week and given the circumstances that we've already talked about, Lockie Neal, so on and so forth, was really impressive. I thought the Eagles were far from that, far from impressive. And at the Gabba as well, so not at home, I've got it hovering over 60. I think that's a pretty uh, reasonable prediction to make. So I think they win that by that much. North Melbourne, Melbourne at Docklands. Oh, do North Melbourne win this game? Oh, wait. Before when I was talking about Gold Coast and Melbourne, like I was looking at the ladder and seeing who Gold Coast played next, but they obviously have the bye. So Gold Coast Melbourne's next week. So ignore what I said about Melbourne needing to back anything that they did up in that game because it's this game. Um, yeah, do North Melbourne win this? That's a tough one. It's going to be close. I have no analysis. I have no analysis. Do I pick a draw? No, can't do that. I'm going to pick North Melbourne. I think they're going to do it. Until they show that they're miles off it, which I don't think they are. As I said, I thought they looked very improved against the Dogs. I'm going to back them in these types of games against the teams that I don't particularly think are going to show too much. Although Melbourne looked better than I expected against the Giants, I think I'm tipping North. I'm going to tip them by a goal. Freo Sydney, two teams that need to respond. Sydney won't want to go 0-3, and they shouldn't want to go 0-3, obviously. But on the other side, the Dockers had a dreadful, dreadful, dreadful loss. And if they get beaten here at Optus Stadium, it looks equally as bleak for them. I said preseason that I thought the Dockers would go undefeated at Optus Stadium. I am hardly as optimistic about the team as a whole, given what I saw against the Cats. However, I'm going to keep sticking with them for now, given I have them in the top four, and I think they need to play very well at this stadium, and they will start off pretty positively there for the year. Will it be a blowout? No, but I think they'll win by 2 goals, which is bad for Sydney to start the year. So yeah, that is it for round two tips. Geez, I really want us to win against Hawthorn. I can't be 14th and 0-2. Potentially lower depending on how these teams go. Ah man. Yeah. Anyway, let's uh let's outro this thing. So that is it for episode 18, the round one review and round two preview. We'll be back next week to review all the happenings from this weekend. I'm going to go to the footy tonight and hopefully enjoy myself. Fingers crossed. But we'll be back, as I said, either Monday or Tuesday. I really want to start doing this earlier. Um, it was not entirely planned to do it this late this week, but I'd rather be consistent and have a pod every week, as I said, than just skip it because it's a little bit too late. Um, so yeah, aside from all that, all the links to the socials are in the description as usual. The personal TikTok, the footy and stuff TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Go follow all those, please. Like, subscribe, comment your suggestions as always, and follow us on the audio platforms as well, because listens on there definitely help. But until next week, I will see you later.